So, Nick, for the purpose of the podcast, I guess, can you tell us where you have seen as a teacher or leader where you have struggled and what you've done with it?
Yeah, so where I struggled there's two times where I've struggled the most. The first was when I took over that second primary school. And once you get past the initial, right, we've got to work on this, we've got to work on this, we've got to work on this, the problems just keep coming and they don't stop. So it's financial, it's teaching and learning, it's the buildings, it's the local community, it's HR issues, it's just non-stop. And then I had the pressure from the local authority at the time, who meant well, but were like, you've got to move quicker, you've got to move quicker, you've got to move quicker. And you get to this point where you're just completely overwhelmed and there is nowhere to go. Like there's not enough hours in the day. You can't just work harder. And I would find that I was I'd fix one problem and then there'd be a bigger one. And we were trying to move people on at the same time. So we had less and less staff to do that. And it was just all consuming. So you'd get up and my job was to work across two schools. And when I'd pitched it, it would be I'd do 2.5 days here, 2.5 days there. I was doing 4 days a week in one school. In the other school, I would be on the gate in the morning. So it looked like I was there. Teachers would see me, parents would see me. I'd get straight in my car and drive to the other one. It took up my evenings, weekends. It took up my head of schools evenings and weekends, and it was just too much. There was just and that was it. Your social life went. So I've learned from it was a brilliant learning curve. I've learned now that actually having friends that do not care in the nicest possible way about schools and education is the best thing you can have. Because when something goes wrong, they don't care, or they'll say things like, oh, is that a bad thing? Or, oh, what does that mean? Oh, anyway, on to the next conversation. And when you live in a world, if all your people you know are in education, you're all consumed in it. So I learned at that stage was the importance of people outside. And then we started to turn a corner. People gave me those quotes, mighty through storms, mighty oaks grow and all that. And that works for about 30 seconds. You're like, yes, I will do this. But that wears off. That wears off when you get the next complaint or the next fire to put out. But it did start to change around. And it started to change around when we got new staff in. And there was a switch there. So we had started in the January, we had our inspection in May. We got requires improvement with a couple of good elements. And I was over the moon. Like it was better than the outstanding at the previous school. Over the moon. And I had no teachers and the long-term supplies were off. So I was doing parents' evenings. Like I was running into a room, looking at some books and thinking, right, what can I say to the parent? So they're getting, so I was like doing parents' evening with HLTAs and all sorts of people. There just wasn't enough staff to go around. Then we recruited and we got a load of young kind of teachers in, and that wasn't a choice. Like younger was better. It was just that was who we could get. So we had a load of NQTs back then, ECTs now, and then it changed, and then boom, like that, it changed. We had teachers teaching well in classrooms, which stopped the firefighting of behaviour, which meant parents were happier. So all the knock-on things that come. So as a leader, your job is so much easier if there's a good teacher in front of a child. And then if you can treat them well enough so people will get on well, mix, learn from each other, then that solves all your other problems. That solves your HR issues. That solves your training issues. So I think some big takeaways from that experience that I learned was, which I try to do with our leaders now, because I work directly with the heads and my executive team. So my day-to-day interaction isn't with class teachers. So I see it as that I can influence them so that they can then influence their staff. So some of the things that I've learned, and might not be the best way, but people need time out. They need time away from school to think, to switch off, to get some perspective again, which I couldn't get in those first 2 terms but I could when I had some good teachers. So with our leaders now, I tried various things. So I started by saying to them, like, I want 3 days a year where you're not in school, right? You're not going to come into school. You can read, you can do whatever you want that will help you think about life, learning, children, whatever kind of frees you up. But so I was feeling like pleased with myself, like, hey, I've done this. And hardly any of them took it up, right? Because they felt guilty. I don't know if they thought it was a trick. I don't know, but you know what it's like. You block something in the diary and then something else comes up and you can't fit it in, but you think, oh, I've got this day. I've got this free day, so I'll pull it in here. So that didn't work. So what I had to then do was say, right, I want you to book in meetings with me. So I want you to book in a meeting. I want the meeting in the diary. I want you to tell me where we're meeting, what we're going to talk about, but I'm not turning up. So at least then it was in the diary and it kind of took the guilt away, because there was definitely some of that guilt about being away from school. And so that's been more effective. And then now we don't need to do that. We can say, look, make sure you manage your time. So I think that was a key thing about managing the well-being. And then another thing I do with our leaders as well is, like, we do a few things that might seem small, but I think psychologically they make a difference. So something I might do with some of our leaders that times might be a bit tough is we sit down and we go, right, well, the term ahead's coming. What do we know is going to go wrong? Right. And we try and write a massive list of, right, I'm going to get a complaint. I'm going to get 10 safeguarding incidents. There's going to be a behavioural. So they start listing it. And so we jot it all down. And then we go, right, so we know this is going to happen. This is the job. The job isn't the do everything else and these things get in the way. This kind of is the job. And then we get to the end of the term. And when we do a review, like, right, so how'd the term go? Like, what are your positives? Always start with what's your positives? What's gone well? What are you happy with? I kind of hear them. And then I say, right, I get the bit of paper out and say, so despite all of this, you've managed to achieve this. So we kind of do those sorts of coaching tools to try and help with the workload aspect. And then another one is speak to the schools about, we kind of call it free zones if you're running a school. There's no science or heavy research behind this, by the way, but we just say there's free zones, right? So zone 1, when you're in zone 1, your job is just to keep the school open, right? You've got a sickness bug that's wiped out half your staff, a boiler's broken, there's a leak here, right? Just keep the school open. That's all your job is to do, is so kids can come in today and learn, right? And then they're going to happen. We don't want them every day, but they're going to happen. Then we've got kind of zone 2, which is we might not have the boiler leak and there might not be as many staff off, but you might be putting out a fire, but you're trying to do a little bit more as a leader as well. You're trying to get around the classes, you're interacting, you're doing more. And then you're going to get these times where things will be smooth. And these are the times to push on with the work that you really want to do with your staff, be it training, be it a different approach to the curriculum, whatever that be. That's when you do your kind of the work. So we try and say, look, if they're feeling under the cosh, look, you're just in zone 1 this week. Just don't worry about it. Obviously, we don't want them there 52 weeks a year. But so we try to be realistic about the job, because I think we all suffer from the school or the trust down the road is perfect and they're not having these issues. And we are the only ones dealing with it. And that's not true. So I think there's some of the biggies we kind of do as an organisation.
I love that. I spoke recently to a head teacher who was completely frazzled and drained, and she was saying that basically she just felt she was firefighting and reacting to dramas all day. And we sat down and we talked about what her strengths were, and they were all around that strategic planning and the bit of the job that she really appreciated, where she was problem solving and data crunching and driving the school forward. But actually, she wasn't using that because it was getting squeezed out all the time. And in what you've said already, you're giving your staff time, which is number one that they say they're short of, to prioritize that. But also you're looking at how to manage your expectations of a day, I guess. This particular head teacher discovered that if she took a morning out every week to do that side where she was using her really valued
Mm.
strengths, then she was more productive through the rest of the week because she was fulfilled already, if you like.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes the different environment can make such a difference.